It's December 6, 2019, and you're watching Battleground. No, it's not false advertising. You can see the official logo. It says Israel Events Battleground, but today it's the Battleground belonging to David Menzies and my lovely co-host, Sheila Gunn. Reid, we're filling in for Ezra, who is on assignment on a secret mission, but he'll be back on Monday, rest assured. So, Sheila, how are you doing there, my friend?
I'm great. And you know, Ezra's mission is so secret that he didn't even tell me. So I'm quite intrigued to see what he's getting up to today. Should we tell the folks what we're doing here? Like how Battleground works? Probably, hey?
I forgot that part already. Yes, please go ahead, Sheila.
It's my job every time we do this. Okay, so Battleground is our weekly live show. As we mentioned, it's usually Ezra's job, but he's trusted us to not drive it into the ground today, David and I. And it's a chance where you get to interact with us live, and David and I get to interact with each other, which is sort of few and far between because we live on other sides of the country. I live in God's country, and he lives in the city-state of Toronto. And what we do here... just build a fence around it.
Hey, come on, Sheila. What's wrong with Toronto? You know, you can walk down the road in Toronto these days.
Toronto?
You can walk down Toronto.
An hour.
I'll tell you. Here's what you don't get in Alberta that we get in Toronto. You can walk down the street minding your own business, and a kind gentleman will toss a bucket full of liquefied human feces on you. Tell me where you'd find that in the province of Alberta. Exactly.
No, I actually pulled it up on my screen so that we don't screw it up, because every time that we host, I say, and I don't actually know what the numbers are, but if you have the opportunity to super chat with us. Yes. So you throw a few bucks at us and it'll highlight your comment. We'll see it, or I will see it. I'll see it out of the corner of my eye. We'll read it aloud. It can be a question or a comment. And the ranges are for $2 to $4.99, you can comment 50 characters. For $5 to $9.99, you can have 150 characters. And your comment is pinned to the top of the stream for 2 full minutes. And that's not the top. You can give us as much money as you want, because unlike the CBC, we don't get $1.5 billion from the taxpayer. Doing stuff like this is how we keep the lights on and how we do the sort of journalism that the CBC doesn't. The accountability journalism, asking the tough questions and holding the powers that be to account on behalf of the people instead of the other way around.
Oh, Sheila, how dare you forget the also $595 million bailout to print media. Right. I mean, I know that's a rounding error these days, right? But no kidding. We don't get any of that either, folks, nor would we ask for it or accept it. Right, Sheila?
Right, exactly.
Okay. So, yes, we do depend on your generosity, folks, and please, if you can, help us keep the lights on here. Especially since our headquarters is in Ontario, where we once had one of the lowest hydro rates in North America, and now we have amongst the highest. We need every penny we can get, even though they don't mint pennies anymore, but you know what I'm saying. So Sheila, gee, what a busy news week. So much to discuss. Why don't we kick it off with Justin Trudeau reinventing his nickname, going from blackface to Two-Face, and I'm not talking about the Batman villain from Gotham City here, of course. Had to put the geek reference in just to bother you there, Sheila. But wow, that, a couple of things happening at NATO. One is Trudeau gossiping behind Trump's back. Obviously, he doesn't have the cojones to say what he wants to Trump mano a mano. And then Justin Trudeau walking into a very important NATO meeting, not even aware of the precise percentage, and it's very important because it's a percentage of gross national product that Canada spends on its NATO commitments. But you know, before I get your opinion, Sheila, I think this speaks of Justin Trudeau's entitlement that he's endured or experienced, I should say, all his life. The idea of never having to get a real job, never having to really bust his hiney, working hard, making mortgage payments, paying off credit card debt, line of credit. Everything was always covered by others, whether it was his dad or the Aga Khan, you name it. So it's not surprising to me that he wouldn't know what the dollar figure is for such an enormous expenditure. And my goodness, what yet another embarrassment for Canada on the national stage.
Yeah, I mean, it shows how ill-prepared he was going into this meeting where he knows full well. I mean, it's a defense meeting. It's NATO. It's the defense of the free world. And he goes there not knowing what his NATO obligations are. We're supposed to be spending 2% of our GDP on defense, and he didn't know what we were spending, which speaks to just how important Justin Trudeau thinks our military is. Mr. Producer, we actually have the clip of the interaction between Trudeau and Trump, and I think this is great because Trudeau knew that he would never get asked this question by anyone in the mainstream media, especially the Canadian media, but he was caught flat-footed when Trump did the work the mainstream media refuses to do.
Mr. President, Canada does not meet the 2% standard. Should it have a plan to meet the 2% standard?
Well, we'll put them on a payment plan, you know? We'll put Canada on a payment plan, right? I'm sure the Prime Minister would love that. What are you at? What is your number?
The number we talk about is 70% increase over these past years, including, and for the coming years, including significant investments in our fighter jets, significant investments in our naval fleets. We are increasing significantly our defense spending from previous governments that cut it.
Okay. Where are you now in terms of your number?
We're at 135?
1.3.
1.4. And continuing to move forward.
They're getting there. They know it's important to do that. And their economy is doing well. They'll get there quickly, I think. Look, it's to their benefit.
And the President knows well as well that Canada has been there for every NATO deployment. We have consistently stepped up, sent our troops into harm's way. We're leading in Iraq. We're leading in NATO, in Latvia. We continue to step up like most of our allies. There are some countries that, even though they might reach the 2%, don't step up nearly as much. And I think it's important to look at what is actually being done. And the United States and all NATO allies know that Canada is a solid, reliable partner that will continue to defend NATO and defend our interests.
And we do have tremendous coordination with radar, with all of the different things that, you know, technologically, we have tremendous coordination between Canada and the United States. So.
You know, Sheila, that's an amazing exchange. I love the very beginning when Trump asks him the question, what is your NATO commitment? And Trudeau starts going off on, well, there's a 70% increase here, and no clue. All the BS, and you can just see it's just repelling like water off a duck's back to Trump. Here's a guy that's developed real estate in the most competitive market in the world, New York City, putting up skyscrapers. And basically, after all that blather, he just says the question again to Trudeau, what is the number? What's the bottom line, right? You can see the art of the deal unfolding here. And I'm sorry, Sheila, it's like a boy challenging a man.
Yeah. Also, pardonnez-moi, I heard something crazy in my ear when Trudeau goes, "Oh, we're leading the way in ISIS or in Iraq." Excuse me. One of the first things he did when he took power in 2015 was to call our fighter jets home, albeit our aged fighter jets, but they were sort of acting as the Air Force in the battle against ISIS. And we knew there was a genocide taking place, and Justin Trudeau pulled our fighter jets home. And secondarily, how dare he piggyback on the sacrifice of our Canadian military in days gone by? He lists off all the other times that the Canadian military has stepped up and led in World War I, in World War II, in Afghanistan. That's great. We all acknowledge that. But that's not an excuse for Justin Trudeau to get away with not pulling his weight today.
Oh, no, I think, Sheila, you've completely misunderstood what our Prime Minister was saying about our ISIS commitments. He's speaking about repatriating Canadians who have gone over to fight for ISIS, such as Ikar Mao, who was in a Brampton courtroom this morning in Brampton. I don't know how that went. there's a publication ban for starters. But this is the fellow who went off to Turkey to go to Syria to join ISIS to fight. So maybe that's what he meant, bringing those great Canadian lads home, maybe cutting checks for $10.5 million for some of them. And, I also find it a little rich when he says, well, it's not always about the money. He talks about the manpower, sending soldiers over to Latvia. And by the way, I don't know what the situation is in Latvia. Is that really a hot spot right now in the world? But I find it rich, Sheila, because yeah, we have these soldiers, we have these people we'll send over to do the grunt work. But when their tour of duty is over and they, need to rely on food banks when they come home, and I'm addressed at a town hall meeting about why they're getting screwed financially, I'll tell them that unlike some of our terrorists, Canadian terrorists getting 8-figure checks, the Canadian military is simply asking for too much. Give me a break.
No kidding. And the embarrassment didn't stop there at the NATO meeting, because then Justin Trudeau met up with his bromance partner, Emmanuel Macron, and they started doing this mean girl routine, gossiping about President Trump behind his back. There was a hot mic because everybody there is not very bright, especially Justin Trudeau. He brings the average IQ down of every room he's in. When you're at these huge international meetings, just assume that the camera and the microphone is always on. And Justin Trudeau has made these sort of embarrassing wandering flubs in the past. I mean, we have that really great video of Justin Trudeau being ignored by everybody as he wanders around to sad music. And it's because they're always rolling. The cameras are always focused on the world leaders. And Justin Trudeau, the first chance he got behind Trump's back, he started bad-mouthing, and I know we have that clip.
And here's the thing, Sheila. First of all, you're absolutely right. If I was the communications assistant to any politician, my first word of advice anywhere, 24/7, 7 days a week, if you're in any kind of a public event, even if the switch on the mic and the camera indicates off, even if there's no batteries in those devices, always assume the mic is hot. Always, always, always. Especially in this day and age when everyone's got practically a cell phone that can record anything. So it was a big gaffe. But this idea of bad-mouthing him, you look at the U.S. economy right now. You look at the unemployment rate there, especially when you dissect it for the unemployment rate for blacks, Hispanics, women, historic lows. The stock exchange numbers, historic highs. You look at the fracking miracle that's going on.
Yep.
And what did we wake up to this morning? News that in November alone in Canada, we lost more than 71,000 jobs, which was a big surprise, according to The Economist. And of course, the Canadian dollar took another nosedive. So you know what, Justin Trudeau? That makes my jaw drop. Not what your interpretation of what President Trump had to say at a press conference.
Well, and he's critical of President Trump for holding 3 back-to-back press conferences. He's talking to the people. He's communicating what's happening at NATO. Justin Trudeau doesn't even have a clue what's going on around him. Justin Trudeau, we know through an access to information request that I did, in 2017 at the APEC summit, so that's the Asia Pacific summit, so a huge opportunity for Canadians as far as trade goes, they had to cancel leaders' meetings because Justin Trudeau took so long in his meetings with Facebook. behind closed doors.
Wow.
The Japanese prime minister had to come in and say, yeah, you know what, we don't even have time for these meetings anymore, because Justin Trudeau is still meeting with who I guess Justin Trudeau thought was more important than our trade partners, and that was Facebook in the lead up to the coming election. It's astounding to me that Justin Trudeau would gossip about President Trump when we have 2 Canadian hostages held by the Chinese because we arrested a Huawei executive at the request of our American friends, and the only man powerful enough on the entire planet to effect some change and save those men's lives is President Trump. And yet, Justin Trudeau is not treating President Trump like, A, he's our largest trading partner, our greatest ally, our closest friend, the man who holds the fate of Alberta in his hands, because that's the only pipeline we're ever going to get is Keystone XL, and who can effect some change for the lives of these 2 men. It is ridiculous. If Justin Trudeau wants to be the leader of the global resistance against President Trump, and I think he does, that's great, but you can't do it from the Prime Minister's office.
Yeah, isn't that great? What a fantastic strategy. Be the global leader of the resistance to the president of the country that is our largest trading partner. And you're quite right, the 2 Michaels being held in China, I think it's just a few days shy of a full year they've been detained, Sheila. And absolutely, I don't see anything happening. That is a disgrace on that file. And by the way, when it comes to press conferences, a 40-minute long press conference, why doesn't Justin Trudeau believe in being accountable out there? I mean, aside from his bought and paid for domesticated state-sponsored stenographers, but the idea of openly and transparently answering questions, as a matter of fact, it's quite the opposite. As our audience likely knows, we had to get a court order to get us into the federal debates. The Ottawa Press Gallery refuses to accredit rebel reporters to cover any event in Ottawa. You'll be going to a UN conference. I was at one with Mr. Producer last December in Morocco. Our own government has conspired to tell the UN gatekeepers not to let us in. And yet the amazing thing is, Sheila, when I was on the flight pass the past 3 months and applied for White House press credentials, absolutely no problem. I get to walk in to the theater of the most powerful man in the world, and our own prime minister, our own government goes out of its way to censor us and ban us and bar us. And this is supposedly a guy who was all about committed to making this government the most transparent in Canadian history. What a joke.
Yeah, I mean, everybody talks about how much President Trump hates the press, and I suspect that's probably true, but they hate him back. However, he sure spends a lot of time talking to them every single day. And I think what could bode very poorly for Canada is that Trudeau's latest gaffe, his gossip girl moment, appears in Joe Biden's newest attack ad. Where, I mean,
I'm sorry. The moment I hear Joe Biden now, it's a punchline, regardless of what the context is of the sentence, Sheila. There have been so many gaffes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh out loud, but if you say those 2 words, Joe and Biden together, I automatically laugh. But go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, no, he's appearing in Joe Biden's latest attack ad, which is, I mean, that doesn't look great for us Canadians. I'm worried. I'm not saying President Trump is vindictive, but we've had steel tariffs once, and our prime minister is out there acting like a buffoon on the world stage. And I worry what this means for for regular Canadians when the Americans really hold our financial future in their hands, and Justin Trudeau really doesn't want to act like it. We have one last clip from the NATO summit. I think one last clip, and it is. Or maybe we have 2. I don't know. It was President Trump's response to Justin Trudeau. And it's so good because it left the internet with so many jokes.
Well, he's two-faced.
Do you think that Germany is too naive?
And honestly, with Trudeau, he's a nice guy. I find him to be a very nice guy. But, the truth is that I called him out on the fact that he's not paying 2%, and I guess he's not very happy about it. I mean, you were there, a couple of you were there, and he's not paying 2%, and he should be paying 2%. It's Canada, they have money, and they should be paying 2%. So I called him out on that, and I'm sure he wasn't happy about it, but that's the way it is. Look, I'm representing the U.S., and he should be paying more than he's paying, and he understands that. So I can imagine he's not that happy, but that's the way it is.
You know, I just love that, Sheila. It's almost like a father talking about his petulant sixth grader and laying down the rules of allowance or whatever. I mean, it's something we don't get from Justin Trudeau with his humming and hawing when it comes to making any kind of formal statement. And like I said, it's men playing with boys on that stage.
Yeah, I appreciate the straight talk. And that's the sort of straight talk we don't even see from the likes of our Conservative Party. They sort of beat around the bush, they tone police themselves, and President Trump just said it just like it was. Is there a country out there, like a major trading partner, that we haven't had a major diplomatic incident with because of Justin Trudeau?
Yeah.
We've got India. As soon as Justin Trudeau came home from India, we got pulse tariffs slapped on Canadian farmers, and we're one of the world's largest exporters of pulses, chickpeas, and they were one of our largest buyers. Of course, there's China. There was the Saudi Arabian incident. There's UK, Australia, Japan, the United States, and of course Israel last week when we voted with North Korea to condemn them.
How
so,
shameful.
I mean, just... You look back at Stephen Harper's slow and steady years, and looking back, hindsight being 2020, I can be critical of some of the things that Stephen Harper didn't do, like nuking CBC and then salting the earth where the building stood. But at least we were constantly embarrassed at every international summit of any kind, which is how it is with Justin Trudeau. You can predict that there's going to be some sort of gaffe. You might not know the gaffe, but you know it's coming, and it's just getting worse. This was his first time in the international spotlight since he barely won the election.
But you know what, Sheila, and I'm glad you mentioned the E-word election. You adroitly pointed out all the international faux pas. You didn't even mention the blackface scandal, the SNC, Lavalin affair. And yet this government got reelected almost with a majority, but it's a large minority government. And I think given that track record of 4 years, that, the events of what happened in the election just 7 weeks ago, it makes me almost lose hope that will there ever be an opportunity whenever the next election is. Maybe it'll be 2 years. Who knows what the timeline is, Sheila. But I don't think the Conservatives will ever be given a gift as spectacular as the first 4 years of the Trudeau administration. And yet he almost got in with another majority. Yeah.
I mean, why do you think Alberta wants nothing to do with the rest of you anymore?
Yeah.
Because we didn't vote for this. All of our votes here in Alberta, they were crossed out by Toronto and Montreal.
Yep.
And that's just the way it works in Confederation. And so when it's a big blue block out here, we didn't vote for this guy. We didn't vote for the constant embarrassment. However, out here in the West, we primarily pay the price for it. Our crops are blocked by India, well, at least heavily tariffed by India. They're blocked by China. Our canola, our meat exports were blocked. We've annoyed President Donald Trump to the point where I think Keystone XL is in serious jeopardy. And that's hurting the West, but the Liberals have nothing to lose. And that's just the way it is in this country right now. But we have a bunch of super chats.
Oh, fantastic. I thought they were ignoring us.
No. I was ignoring them. Okay. We've got one from my friend Justin at Proud Boys Calgary, $6.99 Canadian. Will payouts to terrorists be allocated under defense spending so Justin Trudeau can pretend to meet the NATO obligations, maybe poetry classes too? Ain't that the truth? They were trying to shoehorn everything they could into defense spending just to inflate those numbers so they didn't look as ridiculous as they do to President Trump. We've got one from Craig McDonald. Hi, Craig. $13.99 Canadian. Trudeau is coming for my AR-15. But unfortunately for me, our beautiful Alberta lakes are frozen and will be for 6 months. I know. I lost my guns in a boating accident. Changed my mind. Yeah. Craig, I saw actually you tweeted earlier today, and I'm sure you're basing this off the throne speech where Justin Trudeau is coming to take our undefined assault rifles, whatever that means. That's again another punishment happening to people who primarily live in the West, who follow the rules, who do everything right, who aren't committing the crimes, being punished for the actions of gangbangers with illegal guns in Toronto. And because Toronto has eliminated carding, and because of an unsecured border in the entire country, but particularly in that part of the country, everybody in the West is going to pay the price for it. Instead of focusing on who exactly is causing the problem. It's easy to change the laws and expect law-abiding people like you and I, Craig, to follow them. It's harder to do the things you need to do to stop the criminals from breaking the law.
Oh, and by the way, and I'm not blaming the cops here, quite the contrary.
Their hands
it's
are tied.
the justice system.
Yep.
They bring in these gangbangers literally with a rap sheet as long as your arm, Sheila,
Yep.
and they always seem to get bail. Always, and also getting credit for time served. And if you know all the liberal left, they keep talking about getting guns off the street, and that automatically to them means gun control and going after duck hunters and whatnot. How about this? You are caught with an illegal gun, and it is an automatic 10-year sentence, absolutely no chance of parole. That's it. I don't care if you shot it. I don't care if you haven't committed a crime with it. You have an illegal handgun in a backpack and you're caught with it. 10 years in the slammer. Oh, no. They won't stop, because then we get into the talk about systemic racism and we need restorative justice, blah, 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 blah. We can get tough on the illegal gun problem. There is absolutely no political appetite on the left to do so. It's
truly ridiculous, especially when I think the video was on this, the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights Twitter page. But the councillors in Toronto, these ones who want to ban guns from all of Toronto, they don't know what it takes to get a restricted firearm. And someone had asked them, what does it take? What is required to get your hands on a restricted firearm legally? And it was like you could hear a pin drop in the room, because nobody knew. And I saw the other day some other council bureaucrat tweeted out, we have to make it, so that you just can't get a handgun anywhere in Canada. You can't. Like that's not how it works. You literally cannot. It can take up to 6 months just to get your license. And that's after they've contacted anybody you've ever known, any of your past relationships, like romantic relationships. They contact all those people too to find out if you're, a violent person, a miserable person, a person who makes threats, is prone to domestic violence. So it's not even things that are criminal on your record. It's things that, could be construed as just lack of marital harmony.
Yep.
They assess all that stuff. It's a very invasive process. To own a restricted firearm, you're one of the highest vetted people in the entire country. And we're under attack because there are people who aren't following the rules, would never follow the rules, and they didn't buy their gun from Cabela's like I do. And I'm not sponsored by Cabela's. They have a lot of time for me at the gun counter. And it's funny how that's where the focus is, because we're the people who follow the laws. So if they change the laws, we're probably going to follow them, because we're just good, decent, normal people. And
it's shameful, Sheila, if I can just add in that all this left-wing window dressing means that the victim list is piling up on their watch. The people they're allegedly going to bat for are getting murdered. It is absolutely despicable. And sorry, you said we have another super chat there?
Oh, we've got super chat.
Oh,
yes.
okay. And by the way, Mr. Producer just whispered in my ear, after you finish those super chats, all I heard was Trudeau apology clip. I don't know what thing about exactly 140 years ago he's apologizing for now.
No.
I don't know if it's an actual personal apology. That should be from front page stuff with this guy.
They
But anyways,
never are personal apologies, David. Never. It's always something you and I have to apologize for. It's always a learning experience for you and me.
Yeah.
We've got one from Proud Boys Calgary again, 279, epidemic of boating accidents among Canadian gunnies. Yes, that's right. Irish Bob gives us $100 Canadian.
Oh, Bagora.
Bob, yeah. Thank you very much, Bob. I don't see a super chat from that, but boy, we sure appreciate your generosity.
Thank you.
Craig McDonald gives us another $13.99. That's very generous, Craig. Craig says, thanks for spending time on the gun control issue. It's important. Keep up the good work, you two, and Merry Christmas. Craig, Merry Christmas to you and your very beautiful family. I've seen lots of pictures and they're pretty darn cute. I guess now we have to go to the Trudeau apology clip from NATO. So he was put on the spot at NATO. He was asked, someone doing a dangerous act of journalism at NATO asked him about his live mic remarks about President Trump, and this is what he said.
Prime Minister, this morning when you approached President Trump before the meeting, did you apologize to him for your remarks last night at Buckingham Palace? And if so, what was his response?
We had a great meeting yesterday between me and the President. We talked about the kinds of things that really matter to Canadians, whether it's how we've been moving forward on NATO, whether the progress being made and NAFTA is going to continue, which we're confident it will. We talked about the challenges of China, and we also talked about a few things. Last night I made a reference to the fact that there was an unscheduled press conference before my meeting with President Trump, and I was happy to take part of it, but it was certainly notable. And I've had a number of good conversations with the President over the course of this day and yesterday. Last night
is that it?
We're good.
I'm waiting to hear. I know there's an Elton John lyric. Sorry seems to be the hardest word. I didn't quite get the apology in that rambling answer.
No, and he goes on to say something to the effect of, world leaders say a lot of things that make their staff's jaw drop, like what he said about Trump. Like he was behaving in a way that made his staff's jaw drop. So it's not Trudeau that screwed up. It's not Trudeau who said something stupid. All world leaders say things that make their staff's jaw drop. It's something they all have to work on, not just Justin Trudeau, apparently. So it's just like the blackface thing where we all had to work on our racism problem, and not the guy who dressed in blackface. It's another lesson for everybody who doesn't need it and not for the guy who does need it. Like, we all have to work on our on being better feminists every time Justin Trudeau gropes a woman or fires one.
But Sheila, can you imagine? I would love to have had a Polaroid snapshot of Justin Trudeau's staff when they got to see that photo in the 2001 yearbook from West Point Grey Academy, right in the middle of an election campaign. You talk about a jaw dropper. I think a few jaws went right through the linoleum that night.
I think they all knew. I don't think it was a state secret. I think they probably all knew. I mean, it was in a yearbook. A lot of people had the yearbook. I'm sure the party properly vetted him and just buried it. Wow. I think they all knew. They were probably shocked that somebody told the story. And of course, it had to come from outside the country. Yep.
Time. Yeah. And of course, I'm rehashing old territory here, but in the follow-up to that, there were so many members of the media party that the story they focused on was, why did this man release this photo of our prime minister in blackface to Time magazine? That was the crime, not what the prime minister was prancing around in. Just incredible. Anyways, I think we're, you mentioned JB, Joe Biden, and we're on to... Please. I mean, here, if I was Donald Trump's advisor for the upcoming 2020 election campaign, Sheila, here's what I say for our ads, ditch the, make America great again or keep America great, shot, videos. Here is our ad campaign budget that we're going to blow it on. Just run unvetted clips of Joe Biden in the last 5 or 10 years speaking about any variety of subjects, and the tagline at the end, do you really want this to be the president of the United States of America? Because I think the first clip we have, and to me, this is more creepy than the annual issue of Creepy magazine. It's Joe Biden talking about hairy legs, and please, everyone, listen to what he says, because I've listened to this about 8 times. Is he referring at one point to children as roaches, as in cockroaches, or is it something else I'm missing? Is there some nuance I'm not picking up on? Anyways, Mr. Producer, please run that Joe Biden clip. Parental guidance advised.
And to get hot, I got hairy legs. And the kids used to come up and reach into the pool and rub my leg down. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Joe, what's wrong?
Oh, we didn't get to that clip, missed because he said something about the little roaches. And sorry, folks, we didn't have that little clip there. Oh, he did say it? Oh, okay, then I must have missed that one. So, Sheila, I know this is very bad for someone who is allegedly a professional broadcaster, but I'm speechless.
I don't know in what context would you think an anecdote about kids jumping on your lap, you having hairy legs, the sunlight, there's a clip of him saying the sunlight used to make the hair on his legs go white, and then the kids would swim under the water and smooth the hairy legs down, and then they would watch the hair come back up. In what context is that an anecdote that your mind reaches for in the middle of what's very clearly a press availability? I constantly laugh at Joe Biden, and on some days I feel sort of bad about it because I feel like he's had at least 1 or 2 strokes right before my very eyes.
But you know, Sheila, here's the thing, though. Not only is it a creepy story, but what makes it worse is that I don't think it's a true story. I think of myself when I was a little boy, think of yourself as a little girl. Did you ever have the compulsion to swim up to an adult male with hairy legs and pat the leg hair down to see it rise back up again? I mean, fun, wow.
Think of all the fun you're having splashing around in the swimming pool, and your friends are playing Marco Polo, or you're throwing around the beach ball, and you're like, wait, I know where there's more fun. Joe Biden's legs. It is so crazy. You know, Joe Biden reminds me of, and he's done this with other stories, with like his corn pop story. Remember that?
Yeah.
The corn pop story. It's like he's not living in the same timeline as everybody else. And you see that a lot from Alzheimer's patients, where you're in the now, things are linear, and they sort of jump around in their memory and in time. And every time I see Joe Biden talking, I feel like his brain has switched back 50 or so years. And that's the memory that he's accessing at that point. And he doesn't even understand how inappropriate it is.
And it's not getting any better. I mean, I think our next clip, Sheila, is from the other day when he was in Iowa, I believe. And he was put on the spot by a disgruntled constituent out there. And Joe Biden, being a scholar, a gentleman, a man of words and deep thoughts, challenged him to a contest of physicality. Let's run that.
I got a question I want you to answer. We all know Trump has been messing around in Ukraine over there, holding their foreign aid for them to come up, saying they're going to investigate you. We don't know that. He's no backbone after that. But you, on the other hand, sent your son over there to get a job and work for a gas company that he had no experience with gas or nothing, in order to get access to the public for the president. So you're selling access to the president just like he is. So
You're a damn liar, man. That's not true. And no one has ever said that. No one has heard that.
I see it on the TV.
You see it on the TV. No, I know you do. And by the way, that's why I'm not sedentary. I get up and no, let him go. Let him go. Look, the reason I'm running is because I've been around a long time and I know more than most people know. And I can get things done. That's why I'm running. And you want to check my shape line, let's do push-ups together here, man. Let's run. Let's do whatever you want to do. Let's take the 19 steps. Number two, no one has said my son has done anything wrong, and I did not on any occasion. And no one has ever said it. Not
I
one.
didn't say you were doing anything wrong.
You said I set up my son to work in an oil company. Isn't that what you said? Get your words straight, Jack.
That's what I hear on MSNBC.
You don't hear that in MSNBC. You did not hear that at all. What you heard. Look, okay, I'm not going to get in an argument with you, man.
Well, I don't want to.
Well, yeah, you do, but look, Fat, look, here's the deal. Here's the deal.
It looks like you don't have any more backbone than Trump.
You know, first of all, two things, Sheila. It's like when you see a politician responding with a physical challenge, that to me is kind of like tuning into an episode of The World's Strongest Man and the two top contenders decide to hash things out for the trophy by having a game of chess, right?
Yeah.
Instead of carrying around old Lada cars or what have you. And, and I will give him props for telling his handler to say, no, let him talk. But obviously, Joe doesn't realize his handler, knowing what Joe could say, has more brains than Joe because he should have aborted that. And the third thing, I said too, but I lied. The third thing is, when you intimate that somebody in the Midwest is fat, that's not a good strategy. A lot of husky people out in the Midwest. I'm sorry, I'm just calling it as it is. I can lose a few pounds myself. That isn't buying him any, favors. And by the way, where is the fat shaming community whenever anyone on the right dares mention anything about weight? They're suddenly silent.
Yeah, everybody clapped when he called that man fat. Like, he didn't just call him fat. He addressed him as though fat were his name. Like, he said, listen, fat. Joe Biden's campaign slogan is no malarkey. But that felt like there was a hell of a lot of malarkey right there. Like, poor old Joe's leg hairs were hackled right up. He talks like he's from a different time and place. Like, like you and I were talking off air, I said if he makes it through this campaign without suddenly reverting to calling women dames and broads and skirts, I would consider that a win for him because it's like his brain is functioning in like just post-war America. You and I were discussing last night about the appropriate use of the word supper versus dinner. And we didn't decide on who is the winner. I think it was me. And we should probably solve this disagreement using push-ups because that's the thing now. Okay,
but it has to be guy-only push-ups. You can't do those female push-ups. And another word of advice for Joe, in addition to using your mouth to say really stupid, bizarre, creepy things, can you also not use your mouth to engulf the finger of your wife while she's talking? I mean, I don't know if you saw that clip, Sheila, but what the hell? I mean, where did that come from? But here's the thing. In the big picture, I think this is showing why Donald Trump has a clear road to the White House getting reelected in 2020. Because Joe Biden, when you look at the progressive loony left, there he is, licking a finger. Good God, it looks like Nosferatu in that 1927 Dracula film. Anyways, when you look at Joe Biden up against the loony progressives in the Democrat Party, I'm talking about Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, he's actually the voice of reason. I mean, you're going all ultra left, or it's going for someone like Joe Biden or the new Mr. Charisma. Sorry, Andrew Scheer, you've lost your nickname, Mr. Bloomberg, who looks like he's addressing a funeral procession whenever he's talking. And I'm not saying that Democrats are going to switch their vote over to Republican candidates. I'm just saying Democrats are going to stay at home, and simply not vote because it's like the choice between capital punishment via the electric chair or the noose. Like, who do you go for? I don't think there is any viable challenger, especially when, despite all the Trudeauian, style gaffes Biden is responsible for, he might be their one best hope, even though I should note that Barack Obama, who spent 8 years in the White House with him, said, this ain't the right guy. I mean, how damning is that, Sheila?
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, worst case scenario, Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden are the leaders of the free world? Can you imagine?
No, I will imagine that from the Dominican Republic or Costa Rica, because I'm getting out of Dodge, right?
Oh, remember I said I would turn my farm into a micronation. I'll be stamping passports. I'll put up a fence, whatever it takes. I'm not moving, but I'm just getting out of the problem. We should jump ahead, though, because we're sort of rapidly running out of time. This is the fastest hour on all of TV. We should jump ahead to your visit to the LCBO, because in Ontario, you still have the centralized state-run liquor stores, which are overpriced and are never open. One time I went to Toronto and it was like 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday, and there was not a liquor store to be had open. I can go to my little just up the road liquor store, like in the middle of Nowheresville, like not in a town, just on the side of the road, and it's open till 2 a.m. on Sundays. So I was just astounded that I suppose it's because it's the government, right? It's okay to lose all that extra after 8 p.m. business, because who cares about making money? It's the government, right? Well, but Sheila, you paid a little visit to them.
I did, and you're 100% right. In Ontario, it is literally their way or the highway, i.e. get on the QEW and go to Buffalo if you want to buy a certain brand of booze they don't carry, or or enjoy longer liquor hours. And of course, Alberta saw the light. I believe was it the late 80s or early 90s that you privatized the government-run liquor stores in Alberta. That's what should be done when you think of the things you want government involved with. I would say the military. I would say policing. I mean, you don't want to contract that out to private companies. But running liquor retail chains, selling lottery casinos, operating casinos. How in blue hell is that the bailiwick of any government? That belongs to the private sector. You regulate it and you tax it and you enforce the rules. That's the rule of government. You don't warehouse and you don't retail liquor. And the problem is when they retail liquor, they do a damn bad job of it, because right now we have an incredible theft problem at the LCBO. There are people openly waltzing out the store with bottles of hard booze, and the policy is don't say anything, don't do anything. And I'm not sure what clip we're going to play, but the LCBO has a novel idea why theft is on the increase. You're not going to believe it. Menzies for the Rebel News here in downtown Toronto. Well, you know, folks, just trying to do a follow-up story on that report we brought to you in the summertime. Namely, it was about the amount of theft that was occurring at Liquor Control Board of Ontario stores across the province. Some peg that theft at $77 million per year. And the problem is that the LCBO just seems to turn a blind eye to that. Well, recently there's been some developments. The LCBO issued a statement in which it came up with a reason why thievery is increasing. You're never going to believe what that reason is. And also, we wanted to find out what the real dollar amount is. Well, for starters, once again, even though they have an entire media relations department, nobody would come out and talk to us. So we decided to go to one of their flagship stores across the parking lot here on Queens Quay. And here is what happened.
You have to go.
Who are you, sir?
You have to leave the store, please.
I don't know who you are.
Sir, I'm the store manager.
Okay,
sir,
then.
You have to leave.
Sir, is it true that the increase in theft, is because of increased media coverage? Well, we're not going to turn it off. Anyway.
Please,
Okay then.
Okay.
So you'll call the police on the media, but you won't call the police on thieves. How does that work? You will let people.
You can talk to corporate communications at the head office. Okay?
I'm glad you said that, sir. We just came from there. Nobody will come out and talk to us. Why is that?
I'll walk you out.
Okay. Are you here to buy liquor, sir? Yeah, I hope. Oh. Okay. What do you make of this, sir? They are kicking us out of the store for reporting the news, but they allow thieves with alcohol just to waltz out. What do you think of that, sir?
It's ridiculous. I see it every day. All over Toronto. Toronto is going.
And you know, sir, they are blaming the increase in theft on media coverage about the thievery. Can you imagine that?
No. It's inconceivable just to think any of this stuff. But I got to work, but hey.
Okay. Thanks for the kind words, sir. Thank you for your time. Okay.
Wow.
You know, what is it with these security guards? They want to show us how clean their hands are by giving us a close-up in the camera. Yeah, so Sheila, that's the bottom line, is the fact that the LCBO says that we wouldn't have such a big theft problem if all you people in the media, including us, wouldn't stop talking about how easy it is to steal at the LCBO. You saw the security was all over us. My question to them is, why aren't you doing anything to stop somebody from waltzing out the store with a $300 bottle of scotch, for goodness sakes? And here's the other thing. This is so bizarre. Sheila, I mentioned the figure $77 million. The LCBO, when it released that statement last week blaming the media for higher theft, said the $77 million figure is inaccurate. It's actually closer to $6 million. We filed months ago an FOI trying to find out what the number is. They declined the FOI on 5 reasons, one of them being it's not in the economic interests of Ontario to reveal this information, even though we, Ontarians, own this corporation. It's a Crown Corporation liquor monopoly. But the bizarre thing is, Sheila, is that if you're denying an FOI, and by the way, we're appealing the decision, and they need an extension because it's the holiday season, even though it's just the first week in December. Can you possibly explain why they won't give us the number in an FOI, yet they will publicly release that in a press release? My theory, I think the unspoken strategy here is the $6 million number is a sham, because we want the hard numbers, and I bet that indicates a number way more than 6 million. I don't know if it's 77 million. That's what the union says. They've calculated that somehow. But imagine that. They have more than $1 million per week waltzing right out the door. Don't say anything, but if you show up as a member, a reporter, they call the police. What's wrong with this picture, Sheila?
Well, and I'm sure when they do eventually give you at least some number, it's going to be the wholesale price as opposed to the price lost to the taxpayer at the retail price on its way out the door. I was talking to my friend Marty Gold. He's an independent Winnipeg journalist. He works for the J.ca, and we were talking about this spate of liquor thefts happening in Winnipeg, and they have the same sort of centralized government-run liquor regime that you have in Ontario. And it's evolving now. It used to be just people walking out the door, and now it's walking out the door and punching the clerk. And there's really nothing being done about the assaults on the clerks, let alone the thefts. And he pointed out, and rightfully so, that if this were happening in the private sector, if you couldn't ensure your staff's safety repeatedly, over and over again, this is happening across the board in Winnipeg, there would be an investigation and you'd probably have your license taken away.
Oh, absolutely.
However, it's the government, so what are they going to do? Investigate themselves and close down their own business? Likely not.
But you know something, Sheila? I did come across a story just yesterday regarding the Winnipeg, and I think even the head of the, Manitoba, I think the head of the Manitoba Liquor Commission there has actually admitted, he used a word like crisis or epidemic. He's actually acknowledging there is a big problem. Yeah. And they pointed to some of the steps they are taking in Manitoba. And one was, it was a Winnipeg store that had a chronic theft problem where people were just showing up on a routine basis and not paying for the booze. They now operate it, it's kind of like a jewelry store. it's a locked gate, and you have to produce government ID, which they take a record of before you get in. Now, do I like that? Not really. But the fact is, if the taxpayers of Manitoba have skin in the game, this is money out of your pocket, because the more they lose, the more they're just going to mark up the price so that the makers can subsidize the takers. And it is absolutely any province in Canada that has a state-sanctioned liquor monopoly, allowing this to happen goes against their ostensible policy reason for having government in the booze business, Sheila, which is we do it out of social responsibility, because if we allowed this potentially deadly substance to be sold by the private sector, well, you'd have 12-year-olds drinking Colt 45 in the parking lot getting loaded. Nothing could be further from the truth, because when you go to the privatized province and states in North America, private entrepreneurs have their livelihood at stake. If they're caught breaking the rules, they'll have a suspension, they'll have their license revoked, their livelihood is gone. So yeah, they're not selling Colt 45 to 12-year-olds. This is a disgrace, and we're staying on this story to find out if the LCBO is actually going to do something about this, or it's going to be business as usual, and the business is multi-million-dollar losses that don't have to be happening. And by the way, Sheila, it's not as though we're picking on the LCBO. If this was Costco or Walmart, a private company, if you want to run your business where you're letting your merchandise fly out the door free of charge, hey, that's your prerogative. But like I said, we, the taxpayers, own this, and it's money out of our pockets.
Yeah, I still can't get my head around state-run liquor stores. In Alberta, and this is just an observation, I don't know why it is the case, but so many new Canadians own liquor stores. And I think it's great. I love that entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah. Come here, start a business, make a life for yourself, succeed. I think that's great. And so when I look at places like Manitoba and Ontario, where you have this state-run liquor monopoly, they're robbing the entrepreneurial experience from all these new Canadians that are enjoying it here in Alberta. And it astounds me that they can't see that they're stealing these opportunities from Canadians.
And Sheila, can I please dismantle the greatest lie of all in Canada in terms of why government is in the liquor business? You'll always hear people, and I'm afraid to say they're simply uninformed, saying, oh, you can't get rid of the liquor board. It's a cash cow. Do you know, I think it was in 2005, I did an article for the Financial Post where I analyzed the financial statement of the LCBO the previous year. And once you took away the operating costs and staff costs, if you can imagine, for that fiscal year, the LCBO, I'm going by memory, actually lost $35 million running a liquor monopoly. And part of the reason is, if you come to Ontario, Sheila, the type of liquor stores they're putting up are Taj Mahal liquor temples where there's no chance of getting a return on investment. The thing is, you privatize the system, those billions of dollars in revenue still come to the province through taxation. That doesn't go away in a privatized system. Yep. In Alberta, you have privatized retailers, but the government's still getting the tax out of it. So it is absolute pure nonsense that the government has to be in the retailing of liquor in order to be a cash cow. I've crunched the numbers. It's false.
Sure, but you're also getting corporate taxes from the private businesses who are selling the liquor. Yep. And I don't think liquor store clerks should be making government wages. They're liquor store clerks. We have to jump ahead, though, because we have to cover what's going on at the Rebel next week. Well, not at the Rebel, but across the pond for the Rebel. Keean and I are going to the UN Climate Change Conference in Madrid. Once again, they are not letting us in because... and I'm sure you've gotten this rejection letter from the UN when you apply. And it's due to harassment, those are the words they use, of Canadian officials by little old me at the UN Climate Change Conference in Morocco, which amounted to asking an Indian chief from Manitoba who paid his way to go to Morocco to bash the oil sands, to bash the jobs and livelihoods of Indigenous communities in and around Fort McMurray.
And Sheila, if I can add,
his press secretary locked herself in a bathroom to get away from me.
Unbelievable. And if I may add, they are doing you and Keean the biggest favor. I've said this to you in the past, my friend, that it doesn't mean, oh, we can't get in, we can't report. You have an incredible talent for going around the periphery and exposing the hypocrisy of these climate Cassandras with their diesel generators creating the heat at their facilities, running luxury limousines and SUVs, letting them idle. You uncover all of that, whereas I'll tell you, Sheila, if you were allowed into the conference, can you imagine how boring it would be to listen to these bureaucrats virtue signal about how they're saving the planet? Give me a break. But for the love of our viewership, please try to nail down Greta Thunberg. I believe she's going over there. She'll be treated like a goddess, of course. And I would love to see either you or Keean get another interview with that one.
Yeah, we're pretty intrepid at tracking her down. She's not or her handlers aren't as good as they think they are at hiding her. If people want to support our trip to Madrid to cover the United Nations Climate Change Conference, they can go to rebelun.com. We are probably going to be one of maybe 2 or 3 skeptic journalists there, and we won't, like you pointed out, we won't be allowed into the conference, which is fine because when they put you in the conference, they just try to manage you. And we're free birds, and you got to let me and Keean fly.
Yep. And once again, Sheila, let it be said that this is the doing of our own government. You experienced it last December in Poland. I experienced it with Mr. Producer last December also in Morocco at the Immigration Compact. And like I said, if they think kicking us out of the building is going to stop the reporting, it's not. Speaking of Mr. Producer, he just barked in my ear, rat, and I don't think that means lunch is being served. So we got to end it here. You're right. This was the fastest hour ever, Sheila. Thank you so much to everybody that kicked in some dollars to keep us on the air. We really appreciate it. So Sheila, to you and to our viewers, have a wonderful weekend. Ezra will be back in this space next Friday. Good afternoon.